All right, guys, we are live, sitting here with Mike DeBalfo. Um, yeah, kind of. Yeah, it's kind of. I don't know how we came about this. We've been talking with Brian and how we come about getting to Mike with Brian Weeks, who I guess you've been working with a little bit, and he's like, hey, you should get Mike DeBalfo on the show. Yes, we should. Yes, we should.
It happened.
It did. So one of the things we do is we like to ask every creator how they got their start, whether it's in comics or just in art in general, or even your earliest remembered drawing. What is the first thing you remembered sketching as a child?
I've been asked that a couple of times, and it always goes back a little bit earlier and earlier. I remember the very, very first thing that I remember drawing. I was 3 or 4. And both my parents worked, so I would go to a babysitter's house for the day, right? And I really liked monster trucks, and I remember drawing Bigfoot, like at 3 or 4 years old, but I didn't draw him right, and I drew him with a tandem axle back wheel, like a tractor trailer truck would have, but he was a monster truck and a pickup truck at the same time. So I remember drawing. That's the first thing I remember drawing, and then I cut it out because it was on construction paper, and I played with it like a toy. That's the very earliest and first thing I remember.
So is that something you just continue drawing monster trucks really for a little bit?
I did probably for like a year or so, and then it was Transformers, and I still can't draw those. So, but I would try my best as a kid. I loved Transformers, but it's weird. I do get asked that question. Not a lot, but often enough. And it occurred to me just a couple of days ago, I didn't really draw that much as a kid. Like, that 3-year-old drawing, that was the first thing I remember drawing. And I remember drawing some dinosaurs here and there and whatnot. But it wasn't until like 2nd or 3rd grade, I had this a reading tutor in school. And I think she confused me with another kid in the class because she would go to my mom and be like, oh, Michael loves to draw so much. I remember being a little kid and thinking like, yeah, I really don't draw that much, actually. I don't know who she's talking about, but that sounds really cool. Like, yeah, maybe I should live up to that. I remember that as in like 2nd grade or something like that. I remember that, and that's when she said that. Like, that's when I started to draw more regularly.
In 2nd grade, already drawing to get girls?
No, man, girls never liked my drawings. Like, it never worked for me. I hear that a lot. Like, girls getting drawings because of their drawings, and even now it doesn't work, so I don't know what the magic behind that is.
So beyond that, did you take a lot of art classes in high school, or is that?
Yeah, I took whatever art classes were available in school, and they were just general art classes. We would do things like sculpting and painting, and you always had to play within the guidelines of whatever the teacher gave you. So it was doing like landscapes and any kind of, for lack of a better word, just kind of generic stuff, just to keep the student busy kind of work is what it was. But even my art teachers, like I excelled at that above most of the other students in the class. So I didn't make anything great because I wasn't really interested in the subject matter. But I learned perspective in 9th grade through one of those classes. Like, I learned basic perspective. That's probably the only thing I ever pulled from any of those classes, though. But then after that, I got out of high school and I went to Joe Kubert School for 2 years, and that's when it got real.
Yeah.
That's when things really started to take shape, and that was real art. That's real art classes at that point.
Now, were you into comics when you were younger? Is that why you chose the Kubert School?
Yeah. I got into comics through watching the Ninja Turtles cartoon. I loved Ninja Turtles so much. The cartoon, and then one day, I remember my brother said something. There was a comic book out there, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool." I knew of comic books, but we lived in a really small town. We didn't have a comic book store or a 7-Eleven or any place that sold comic books, so we didn't have access to them. But I remember I had a Todd McFarlane Batman, like, 456 or whatever it was, Death in the Family issue. That was like one of the only comic books I ever had, and at that time that's like the only book I did have, so I was familiar with them. And then I went on this search just wherever I could to find Ninja Turtle comic books, and this was like the mid to late 80s, and I don't know if you guys were looking for Ninja Turtle comic books around that time, but they were scarce. Like you couldn't go to the store and get back issues of Mirage era Ninja Turtle comics. It was a hard thing to do. And then then the X-Men cartoon came out, and that changed everything. I was like, holy crap, this is the best thing I've ever seen. And I've seen these comic books around. You know, there was a store at the mall, but the mall was 40 minutes away from where we lived. But the next chance I got to go there, I remember I mowed a couple of lawns and I bought a Jim Lee back issue for like $15, and it broke my bank. But that was the game changer, like X-Men, and then seeing Jim Lee's work, because it was like before that point I knew a lot about cartoons and I watched a lot of cartoons, and I wanted to be an animator for a long time, and then I saw Jim's work and it was like, oh my God, people can draw like this? Like, this is insane. This is holy crap. Yeah. And the rest is history after that, yeah.
So while in the Kubert school, was that, I guess, did you have any idea that you would be only in comics? Did you have any plans to maybe venture into other areas? Or
Yeah, absolutely. Well, actually, while going to Kubert school, I started. They put us through the trenches. When you go there, I don't know how it is at other art schools, but when you go to Kubert school, like, you're not just doing comic books. They're training you to be a general graphic artist. You know, do album covers, advertisements, and all kinds of stuff. And through the process of going through that, I still liked comic books, and I really liked the comic book art style. But I started thinking, like, maybe I want to be a general pinup artist. And being just a cover artist wasn't really a thing at the time. This is like 2001 to 2002. So, you know, exclusive covers and variants were around, but if you did that, that's not all you did. Like, you weren't just a cover artist. You know, you had to be known for doing interiors. And so I started thinking about it, and it's like, well, I discovered my knack for drawing pretty girls during that time, and I started getting into some of the iconic pinup artists of like Gil Elfgren, Alberto Vargas, Robert McGinnis, guys from like the 30s to 50s, early 60s or so. And I was like, oh, you know, like, those are the guys I started looking up to more than anybody else at that point. And I started thinking, like, maybe I could be a pinup artist, but that's not a thing anymore. So I don't know how to do that. So it went back and forth for a while, and I learned at that point, it's like, okay, well, you know, I can draw interior pages. I can draw comic books. Like, you know, let me get out of here, and launch my career as a comic book artist, a traditional comic book artist, and then try to segue that into a different career as a pinup artist or a pinup illustrator of some sort. And by the time I got out and by the time I broke in, the name of the game had changed a little bit, and I broke in as a cover artist. So I did some interiors for Aspen for a little bit, but I broke in as a cover artist, and that's 90% of my career.
So what was the first published cover that you had?
The first one was a cover for Wonderland Annual 2009 for Zenescope. And yeah, that was weird, because even at that point, like, being like, you didn't break in as a cover artist. It was 2009. You didn't just come in off the street and become a cover artist. You know, you had to show, you know, put in your work and show your chops as being doing interior pages and whatnot. So I never thought I would get the job. I knew I was in correspondence with Raven Gregory, who was a writer on Wonderland and an assistant editor at Zenescope at the time, and we were in correspondence. And he was like, "Hey, just, you know, draw some fairy tale stuff and send it to me, and I'll show it to the guys around the office, and, you know, maybe we can get you something on a cover." And I was like, all right, fat chance of that happening. You know, like, I don't have any experience. Nobody knows who I am. Why are they going to pay $20 for a cover from me? But anyway, it proved to work out. I sent in a bunch of what they call spec covers, which is, you know, just draw a company something and you send it to them, and if they have a reason, if they're in a bind and they need artwork fast, maybe they'll use one of those. I drew, I don't know how many of those. It was months though. Every week or every other week, I would send them a new one, just kind of like, you know, overloading them. One, so they didn't forget who I was, and two, just to increase my chances of them seeing something that maybe they can use. So again, I didn't think it would happen. I didn't think that I would get a job as break in as a cover artist, because again, at that time, that just didn't happen unless you were like Greg Horn or somebody who paints really, really well.
So after the Zenescope, the first cover published, what would be your next moment where you attain something that you was kind of an aha moment, I suppose?
Maybe when I got the job at Aspen doing Soulfire, after 2 years of working with Zenescope doing covers, Aspen approached me to work on a project, and we those guys and I we talked a few times here and there at conventions. We always kind of wanted to do something together, but the stars never aligned, and timing was just never right. And then one day in 2012, I met with them, and they're like, "Hey, man, here's what we're going to do with Soulfire on Volume 4. We want to have Grace turn to the dark side, so to speak, and we were curious if you'd be interested in doing interiors on that." And I was like that was a big moment, because to me, Aspen was a big deal. Like, that's Michael Turner's company. Those guys are such great guys, and the fact that they had faith in me to take me on without really ever seeing me do interiors before, and try me out. That was a pretty big moment. That was pretty special. I felt like I was getting somewhere at that point.
What's your experience like with doing interiors at that point? Were you, had you had much interior experience up to that point?
I did and I didn't. During like I said, I did 2 years at Cubert School, and during those 2 years, I drew hundreds of interior pages. Some were good. Most of them were pretty bad, because I was still a student and I was still learning a lot. But I had a lot of the knowledge on how to do them was there. It was a matter of lining up the skill level with it. So by the time I got to Aspen, I had the skill level and the knowledge. Now I just needed to exercise it all. And it's weird. Like, I hadn't drawn interiors in 10 years at that point. It was 2002 to 2012. But when I sat down to start doing layouts and thumbing out the pages and whatnot, it was kind of weird how kinetic everything kind of fell back into place at that point. Maybe because I'd been drawing so much, just doing covers and whatnot. But the time restriction was not something that I was used to. That was something where I had to draw 22 pages in a 30-day period. Whereas when I was going to school and doing the studying, you draw 2 pages in a week is kind of how it went. But you also actually you have to ink those pages too. Like, Cubert always had us inking all of our pages too. But anyway, going on a professional full-time 22-page schedule after 10 years, the biggest hurdle for me at that point was time. And I had a kid, I had a wife, I had a house, I had car payment. I was an adult. I wasn't a kid anymore, and real life responsibilities, managing time, getting the pages done, managing time, making sure that my family saw me every once in a while. That was a bigger struggle than it was actually doing the work and doing the pages, honestly. Yeah.
Oh, what concessions did you find you had to make with your style to kind of get, I guess, them in on time and stuff like that?
It was a matter of minimizing things. As far minimizing, as in, not going as detailed, not being as refined. Learning to compromise what's necessary just to get the point across, and determining what's bonus, what's gravy that doesn't really need to be there. But if you have time, it's you go back and you put that in. So that was interesting too. Like, it did change my style a little bit. It refined my style, and it took me to the next level. And it also it did change it a little bit. I didn't draw as my line work was a little bit more choppy. It was a little more angular than what I was doing before. I'm trying to think what else it was. It's so long ago now, but a lot of it was mostly learning to minimize, like I said, and getting the important parts out first and foremost. So, but I wanted to go back with every page and be like, oh, can I just spend 10 more minutes on this panel? This splash page, can I just add a little bit more rubble over here? And a lot of times I just never had the chance to do that. That's all.
So did you have any, influences or mentors coming up to this point?
Up to this point, there's been people who have come, like Raven Gregory, like early on. he essentially broke me in, and once I got in, we hung out a lot, and we would talk a lot. And he gave some good advice on, like, saying like, hey, this is good, this convention's coming up, like, you should submit something, and reach out to this company, see if they're interested in working with you on something. He was pretty good for advice early on, because I was so wet behind the ears, and he had some experience at that point. He was an assistant editor, so he knew numbers, and he would give me the heads up on some things, which was nice. So now in return, I have an apprentice now, and I kind of do the same thing for her. It's like, I don't hold back the punches with her. I'm like, this industry isn't always fun. So, do this to avoid this pitfall, and so on and so forth. And I learned a lot from Raven. And then I don't know if you guys know Brett Kate. She works with Sora, or he works with Sora. He came in maybe a year or so later. So we became really, really good friends, really close friends for a long time. And he was great too. Like, he was instrumental in really making this into a business for me. He kind of showed me the ideas of marketing and starting to get me on a path of making this more of a business and not just my job. Where I got a paycheck from whatever publisher I was working with, and that was the end of the day. So because of Brett is part of the reason why eventually I was able to leave my day job and do this full time.
Now, you mentioned Jim Lee earlier, and he kind of famously with his Batman Hush stuff, he put the tread on Batman's boot.
Yeah, man.
Were you like a go-getter? What, like when you started doing tiers, like, I'm going to do this to this book and I can't wait? And then you're like, crap.
That's exactly how I felt. Yeah, going into it. Yeah, Batman Hush was a big deal when that came out, man. I was in Kubert when that came out, and that was a big deal. It was actually it was cool that I was at Kubert when that book came out, because it is significant, and everybody in the school freaked out. So going into, if you're asking from like going into Soulfire, is that what I was like picturing in my head?
I guess any project you've got into and you're like, I'm going to add this, I can't wait to do it, and then you've done it. You're like, why did I do that? I don't want to do this every time now.
I'm trying to think. That's a good question. I don't think I've ever had that. I don't think I've ever felt like I was stuck in a project, because I worked some shitty jobs growing up, man. And it's like every time I have bad days at this job. Doing art. It's a fun job. It's cool, but it's still a job. You have bad days every now and then. And almost every time I have a bad day at work now, I think back to some of the jobs I've had before, and it's like, man, this beats the heck out of the plumbing job. It beats the heck out of my lumberyard job. It beats the heck out of my cubicle job. So I don't think I've ever been put in a project where I'm like, I just want to get the hell out of this. I don't think I've ever had that moment. Thankfully, knock on wood, it doesn't happen. The day's not over yet.
Are there any projects that you haven't been able to work on as of yet that you kind of have your eyes set on, and you just really like to get there?
For a long time, especially when I was going to Kubert, I wanted to draw Spider-Man. It's weird. I was into Spider-Man a little bit growing up, but in my early 20s, I got really into Spider-Man, and I wanted to draw Spider-Man. Like, that was the dream for a long time, and I think that's faded off a little bit at this point. Still like Spider-Man, but I've learned, some artists are good for a project, and some artists probably some projects would be best with someone else on it. I don't think I would be a good Spider-Man artist, honestly. At this point, I don't know what I want to do. I haven't given that thought in a while, actually. I'm kind of at the point right now where I'm a little bit lucky, where I can be kind of picky and choosy with the projects that I take on and the projects that I leave behind, which is a nice place to be. I'm fortunate to have that. But I don't. Sounds bad, but I don't have anything that I'm aspiring for right now as far as like, I want to work on that project at the moment.
Just nothing's caught your eye yet, I guess.
Yeah, and something will come along. Like over the year, like early on, like Aspen was like a mark. Like, I would love to do a cover for Aspen, and I exceeded that by going on there and doing a full project with them, and then several covers on top of it. And then I got out of Aspen, and that's when I wanted to start to pursue things as more of a business. And I did that for a long time, and that was fulfilling. So kind of, you know, I get, maybe if anything, like my next thing would be like I'd like to do something like what J. Scott Campbell does, where he's just kind of like his own brand, and he does what has to be done. Like he'll do things with Marvel because he enjoys it and because it keeps him relevant. But for the most part, Scott just kind of, you know, he has fun. He does what he wants to do. Like that's like the ultimate goal, I guess. No, that's what I'd like to do eventually.
Yeah. Now, do you find you prefer to do the the solicited stuff over Kickstarters, or do you really have a preference at this point? Because I know the reason I ask is some artists, you know, do have a hang up a bit on the Kickstarters because they're not as well known,
Right.
With the exception of Lady Death, as you know, your standard solicit covers.
Yeah, I don't mind doing either. The solicit covers are better because of the exposure that comes from them. Yeah, like when I do something for Zenoscope or any of the other, you know, bigger independent publishers, I know that's going to get more traction as far as, you know, finding new people and landing on bookshelves and whatnot. But the Kickstarter stuff is fun because there's a lot more leniency with those projects. A lot of times those guys are new to the industry and they're like, yeah, do whatever you want. You know, you're the guy, you know what works. You know, go in there and just make sure my character looks like her character, and that's always fun. Like to give that kind of like an artist that kind of a leeway. Whereas with, and I'll just say Zenoscope specifically because I'm best known for them. It's not constricting, but a lot of times they'll say, we have this in mind, you know, this kind of a pose or this kind of a theme. Let's go with that, and then let me run with things from there and on. So I'm not going to say it's constricting that way, but they have to keep in mind that it's going to be on bookstore comic book shelves, and more people are going to see it in the wild rather than people going directly to a Kickstarter, where they have to be a little bit more careful with where they tread. Both are fine. I don't put more work into one over the other. But I don't have a preference. But I can see why some people might prefer the solicited stuff over the Kickstarters. I can understand that.
Do you have a character that you really like to draw? Maybe not a character that you've really ever been published as drawing, but you know, something you do for warm up or something.
I'm really good at drawing Mary Jane. I don't know why. Somehow I got not to say known for drawing her, but I get a lot of requests for drawing Mary Jane. But she's always fun to draw. Like I find it's so funny because I always say like it's hard to draw Mary Jane because to draw Mary Jane you have to draw her in correlation with Spider-Man somehow. You have to put her in a Spider-Man shirt. You have to put Spidey in the picture. You have to put spider webs or something somewhere. Otherwise, it's just a girl with red hair. But at the same time, it's like I think my style, like I said earlier, like some people are just good at drawing a particular character like Spider-Man or Wolverine or whatever, and I just feel like my style fits well with a character like Mary Jane. That very girl next door look. You know, she's not Hollywood glamour or anything like that. But I love Rogue. I love drawing Rogue, and I never get enough opportunities for that. For some reason, like everybody knows I like her a lot, but everybody wants me to draw Mary Jane instead, and never ask for Rogue.
Now, 90s Rogue or Savage Land Rogue?
Oh man, they're either or. When coming into things, I really liked Savage Land more, but now I'm a little bit older. My hormones have calmed down, so I don't mind drawing the regular version of Rogue. It's, as much, but Savage Land Rogue is, of course, iconic in her own way.
Yeah. Let's see.
You started out reading comics. Are you still picking up comics today?
Yeah, I am as of recently, actually. It's funny. I read comics for a long, long time, and it's kind of once I broke into the industry working professionally, I dropped off. Like I stopped reading, I stopped collecting, I stopped really paying attention to a lot that was going on because my entire life became comic books over like the course of maybe 6 months, from being a normal guy to being just absolutely engulfed in everything comic books, and it became like wearing. It was like, well, I want a little bit of a break. I need to find something for me. So I kept all my comics. I never sold them or anything. I still have my collection, but within the last year or so, I started getting back into it. But I'm going back. I like to collect the Bronze Age and Silver Age stuff now. Actually, I love the artwork. I love the way the books smell. Comic books today, they don't have that same smell anymore. But I'm going back mostly for the artistic influence. They always say study the masters of your masters. So I'm going back and looking at John Byrne stuff. I'm going back and looking at Neil Adams stuff. The guys who inspired the guys that I grew up loving. So doing that got me into those older books, and that's what I'm into now. And it's breaking my bank, so I need more money so I can buy more expensive comic books.
Don't we all?
I know, man. It's hard. It's real.
Every time I think I'll never afford this, I sell something and then I can afford
Dude,
that.
there's so many books recently. I'm like, I never thought I would own this book, and here I am. I have it. Like that's pretty unreal. There's some books I have where I'm like, but yeah, then it's like, then I start saying like, okay, I want this book now. What book that I thought I would never have that I have can I let go of? To get this new book. That's what I find myself doing now.
What is your current grail? Your current hunt?
My current hunt, it's a tragic story, but my grail of grails that I'm after right now is Ninja Turtles #1, the first print. And I had one a few years ago, and I regretfully sold it. But I want another one now because I have the whole run except for issue #1, and I need it, if nothing else, just to complete that run, right? And of course, now was it last August? Like this time last year, it just blew the hell up.
Yeah.
So now it's like, oh man, okay. I had one for like 10 years though, and I sold it maybe 5 years ago or so, just because I needed money. I got divorced and I needed money, so I sold it.
So are you a completionist, like you have the first, second, third print, or are you just after the
I thought about doing that.
It's costly.
I'm still not opposed to doing it. Like I might do that. I don't know. It's hard for me to answer that. Because more when I think about it, I want to do it, but at the same time, it's like I don't know what the point of that really would be. Because I'm doing the X-Men run too. Like I'm collecting the X-Men run, and that's a big run. So I don't think third prints and second prints. I don't know.
I tried that because I'm a big Cable fan, and I went down that, got every one of his appearances first, and whatever can printing afterwards, every variant, and that was a hunt, dude. That was a beast.
That's the fun of it, though.
Yeah. I also do with Art Germ stuff now. So.
Oh, Art Germ stuff, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because we operate Art Germ collectibles as well. So
that shouldn't be too hard then.
It is and it isn't. Like the current stuff that we do is relatively easy to get because we're the only ones that produce. Yeah. Now you start getting back into like Capstone, which is a book that he didn't even know was produced.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean,
it's buried then. You got to dig into some rocks for that kind of stuff.
That's how it was. Down Warhammer, Forge. What's the name of the book?
Warhammer 4K.
Yeah, 4K. Something Forge. What
is his earliest published work? Because I remember finding him at first on DVD.
Warhammer.
Like, when did that come out?
2007.
Okay.
And this is his only interior.
No kidding, really?
Yep.
Oh, I gotta look for that then.
Yeah.
Remember, I found him on DeviantArt in like 2009, and his DeviantArt page was mostly just Pepper stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, how is this guy so good and he's not working, in the industry somewhere? And then 2 or 3 years later, Art Germ exploded. But I'd never seen any artwork from him before 2009 anywhere, published anyway. So that's interesting.
So we're about running out of time, but before we go, I do want to make a bit of an announcement. For Mike, you guys know that we also do the Comic-Con line, and we have another show coming up. That show's in October, and Mike is the first guest now.
I will be there.
Fun things are going to happen. It is October. Right now, we're trying to fit it into 3 days because 4 days was a little much. 3 days would be the 16th, 17th, and 18th of October. So you guys get ready for that. Tune in to see Mike. Mike, people that are watching this, where can they follow you?
You can follow me on Facebook here under Mike DeBalfo. There's 2 pages. Both are equally active. I wouldn't say one is better than the other at this point. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter, but don't even bother. I'm just not on Twitter, but I have it just because it feels necessary.
If it wasn't for Greg, we wouldn't have a Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, if I get 7 likes,
do anything else.
If I get a comment on Twitter a year, I'm like, oh, cool, I feel special now. And in DeviantArt, I'm Squirrel Shaver on DeviantArt. Not as active on there as I used to be, though. I don't I don't know why, but I used to love DeviantArt. It's
Yeah.
all about the Facebook and Instagram these days, kids. So.
Plus, they use ArtStation a lot now too.
Oh yeah. I got into that for a little bit. They approached me when they were still in like beta mode, and they had me set up a page, whenever that was, a few years ago or so. And I don't know why it just hasn't. I haven't really experimented and paid enough attention to it to give it a fair try, honestly.
I think it's roughly the same thing as DeviantArt. I've never
That's what
operated.
it seems like. Yeah, there's some great artwork on there. Like I pop into there every once in a while from a Google search. But yeah, it seems like DeviantArt 2.0. Yeah,
And IG.
Instagram. Yeah, I'm on Instagram. So
Yeah.
Instagram and Facebook. That's where you find me.
What do you have coming out next that the people can pick up?
I'm wrapping up the 12-issue cover run with Zenoscope, their 15th anniversary project. I'm wrapping up the last cover on that right now.
Yeah.
So actually, the new cover, the August cover, will come out. If it's not out right now, it'll be out in the next few days on Zenoscope's website. Then I have a couple of Naughty and Nice covers coming up, and then I'm actually going to take a bit of a sabbatical from doing covers for just a little bit. I haven't done commissions in like 6 years. So I get so many requests for commissions. So I'm going to take a little bit, maybe a month or two, and just focus on just commissions. And then hopefully take on some more and then get back into covers and such after that. So I don't have anything exciting to talk about at the moment, just ironically because I'm ramping up to take a bit of time off. That's all, like a month or so off. So I haven't scheduled anything out yet.
I'm sure come October you'll have plenty to talk about, man.
Oh yeah, right. That's exactly how it is. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, Mike, man, it was a pleasure having you. Thanks for coming on and sharing your art journey with us.
Cool, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It was fun.
All right, make sure to go follow him, guys.
Yeah.
All right, Mike, we'll see you in October, buddy.
All right, man. See ya.